What's going down? It's 144 the Teraband, and of course we've been on marathon all weekend. Launch weekend has been insane. I've had some pretty good squads. We've been basically picking up where we left off from the Service Slam, knowing exactly what we needed to do, starting to do the factions, contracts, and all that sort of stuff. Really starting to make our gameplay efficient. Making your character profitable is the most important thing in Marathon. And of course, there are multiple ways to do that. Very easy ways to do that, in fact, running with kits such as sponsored kits, not going completely all out. You don't got to run your purples right when you get them. It's not necessary, honestly. I typically run green weapons, green gear, cores, that kind of stuff. That seems to get the job done. And as I'm continuing to run those types of kits for the majority of my gameplay, every now and then I'll experiment with some of my higher tier weapons, but at the same time, unlocking the faction skill trees, making sure that I'm preparing my character to have a sustainable capability to run more advanced gear in the long term. And with that, you of course have to prepare for the Outpost map, which is the new map that was unleashed to the public. You know what I'm saying? Earlier this weekend, I believe it was on what was it, Friday, that they showed that. Of course, it being Saturday now, where I'm making this video, we're seeing a lot of squads from streamers to players alike getting in that map, getting to find out what the spider secrets are. I actually managed to snag a marathon key off of a down player that I took out, and so in preparation for that particular type of raid, we're still building an understanding of what it's going to take to be successful on the marathon ship. And so in preparation of that, that's another reason why it's important to save your highest tier weapons and loot in preparation for that. So that's definitely what we're looking at the beginning stages of marathon, and it's such an intriguing game to finally get our hands on in its full form, at least as it's rolling out its final form and giving us a better understanding of what Bungie exactly has in store for this game in its future. Of course, this video is going to show all of my PvP highlights over the past few days. You know what I'm saying? Just kind of condensing all of my footage to the most action-packed parts that include mostly the PvP, a little bit of PvE, and of course you got to throw that in there too. There's some pretty interesting moments even with the PvE because there are no pushovers in this game. I'm gonna tell you straight up, as somebody that's a shooter veteran, you know what I'm saying, playing a lot of games that are first-person shooters, coming from games, of course, like Dust 514, early day Call of Duty, Killzone 2, of course, even on PC, games like War Rock, which is Korean's version of Counter-Strike on crack and stuff like that. So my aiming has been pretty much held up over time, even using controller. There's still some fine tuning, some exaggerated movements that I make running at higher sensitivity, but I'm gonna tell you right now, everything's really starting to come together from my character to my squad mates that I know that I can trust. This game does have a really hardcore fan base, and so for any players or gamers on any platform that has access to this game, if you're still on the fence about whether or not you want to try it, just know that it is an intense game. It is intimidating to play. It is difficult, but it is one of the most rewarding games that you'll ever play once it really starts clicking. And that begins in the menus. It begins with your cunning and your ability to put together your shell and your suits, your setup to be successful, and there are multiple ways to do that. Of course, some weapons are better for certain situations on certain maps, so you consider all those things. Also consider the playing style that you choose to go with when running, right? Are you a recon? Are you a triage? Are you a vandal? Do you like to get up top with thief? It's basically the type of game where every single shell really does their own thing very well. And so there's multiple playing styles. I've actually had so much fun messing with all the different suits. I can't point out one that I think is bad. I think they're all actually very good at certain things. And I can't wait to see how that plays out as we get more into the in-game content. You know what I'm saying? Some people might say the destroyer shell is not that good, but what if you might need somebody with the shell or somebody that can do DPS with missile launchers when we're doing like an in-game type of activity. So it's interesting to see how the build crafting really comes into play. Perhaps at a later time, I'll kind of dive deep into some of these weapons that I've been crafting and saving up in preparation, because some of the cores and attachments that you can get for these weapons make it seem like exotics in other games, even though you're just dealing with like green or blue tier loot. So it really just makes you wonder, well, what's in store next? And those are things that are really exciting to find out as you're playing the game, right? Now, I'm not going to say that I spent my whole weekend playing. I was actually busy all day Saturday. And so it's been the kind of game that lingers in your mind, that makes you want to really think about every run before you move in and coordinate with your squad. And it's just such a rewarding experience. And I got to tip my hat off to Bungie for really pulling off a game with so much depth, with progression. I'm telling you right now, this game does not play like any other FPS that I've played in a very long time. Okay, comparing this to games like Dust 514, which is one of the most cognitive FPS shooters that I've ever played, this game can finally sit atop the FPS totem pole as one of the most interesting and intellect-based FPS games that you'll ever come across. And I mean that wholeheartedly. I'm not saying that because I'm saying, oh, you play mindless games like Call of Duty, there's no depth there. That's not really the case, because this game is just unique. And I see what Bungie's whole entire purpose was when making this game, was to truly go for something unique. Okay, yes, extraction shooters are not new, but how can they do something different? And they've actually pulled something off that is the bare bones form of what we'll be getting with Marathon moving forward. If this is the bare bones version of Marathon, give this game a couple of months, a couple of seasons to really cook. It's going to build more and more of a repertoire on what this game can become. More maps, more shells, more activities. It really just blends together some of the best elements of games that we know and love. The PvE elements of Destiny, the PvP elements of Destiny, or PvP elements of things like Warzone, or even, of course, people compare this game to Ark Raiders. Of course, there's going to be the comparisons. Those things are going to come. The player base numbers are going to be compared. But I don't let any of those things deter me, because I understand that this is a very hardcore game. And with a hardcore game like this, it's definitely building a hardcore audience that will stand by it and defend it. But more importantly, play it whenever they get the chance. So we'll see fluctuations in the Steam player count, which is probably the only real indication that we have as far as like in real time. But I'm playing this game on console. I'd be curious to know how this game is doing on console, how the numbers are looking, how the sales numbers are looking, how it's looking across all platforms in comparison between Xbox and PlayStation, because I really think that there's a niche here that this game is really fulfilling for a lot of people that are looking for a shooting game with some depth. They're looking for something new, that still wants something grounded to some extent, but still is interested in sci-fi, which is something that's perfect for me. This fits right into the kind of games that I like to play. Dust 514 was a perfect example of that. What people are actually starting to realize as they're playing the game, even the naysayers who have been converted over from watching their favorite streamers and deciding, you know what, maybe I should give it a try. And then as they play the game, they're starting to realize something that's deeply rooted that they don't realize is happening. You know what that is? Marathon is successfully proving the evolution of what the FPS game is. And what does that mean? So when you play lobby shooters, there is progression to some extent, but it's not realistic. Obviously, your characters, they die over and over and over, and your name is slapped on top of them, but technically they're soldiers that die. So if they die, that means you're using a different soldier every single life. And so there's that aspect of it. It's not completely immersive. It's not completely believable because of that. What Dust 514 did successfully, even as a lobby shooter, was the constant transfer theme to the game, right? And Marathon, of course, does the same thing. But not only does it give lore to the respawn, what it does is that it fundamentally changes the format of what an FPS is. And of course, extraction shooters are another format change to what we expect. But the fact that the death and life again is a part of the lore changes a lot about the way the game immerses you into it, because your character can complete factions and then die before you exfil, and it still count towards your progression, because as you respawn in another shell preparing for the next mission, it's like, okay, I'm truly learning from what my mistake was before, and it actually is the story. Like, you progressing in the game becomes the story. In a battle royale, you start off with nothing and you loot, and then you try to win, and then most of the time you lose, because, well, statistically speaking, there's so many people on the map, right? So many people are losing. In an extraction shooter, it finds that happy balance in the middle where you end up quote unquote winning or extracting more often. Maybe not 100%. There may be some really good win streaks. There may be some really bad losing streaks, which can definitely happen. But the gameplay loop for the Battle Royale is, once you win, there's nothing really to show for it other than, okay, yeah, that's another win under the belt. What the extraction shooter has also done, and especially now that we're seeing such a really good one like this that brings all the elements of progression together, it's telling you that you're actually like taking something out of it and then taking that into the next game. And so that ups the ante quite a bit. In Dust 514, you had to learn how to budget your drop suits and maybe not always run prototype gear, but towards the end of that game's lifespan, I had an entire repertoire of prototype gear, so I was always running like what this game would be considered the exotics and the purples. Dust 514 had officer suits and prototype suits that I had stored up just because of all the success I had in that game, and I was running it all the time at the end, where I literally couldn't even run out of my gear before the servers actually shut down. Marathon has, of course, a little bit more of a balanced format where you can't hoard an infinite amount, but would rather have to learn how to use your space in your vault, expand your vault, and of course, you start filtering out weaker gear as you start to fill your vault up. And of course, you don't have any excuse that you can't do it, because you could always just run sponsor kits and try to go for broke and try to win. You may not win as much as you would if you were always running good suits, but you could always resort to that if you need to get on a roll of just building your vault space. And then, of course, doing so will give you a much better flexible approach to actually ranking up and advancing your weapons that are in your vault to prepare. Now, of course, this is not new in that aspect to players that are playing games like Arc Raiders, but the fact that we have an FPS that requires you to come around that corner, that requires you to put yourself at risk every time you step out, and your gear is at risk every time you step out, it, like I said, proves that Marathon is actually showing and proving itself to be the pinnacle of the evolution of the first-person shooter. Games like Counter-Strike have aspects of that, but it's round-based, and so that's something to keep in mind. So games that are lobby shooters, technically, or search and destroy type games, can still bring aspects of that. And again, Marathon is taking those elements and adding it to what it's doing, while at the same time including lore that brings it all full circle. And that's very impressive to me, to see a game do that. But Marathon in particular is a game that was kind of sort of undercover for quite a bit. They released footage of the game over the past year or two of the alpha, and it was met with some mixed reactions with the graphics and the gameplay loop. But again, what they've done here is that they've evolved what the first-person shooter is, and they have a base platform and foundation that's going to make this game really shine as we continue to add more and more to what we know today as Marathon. And so, that being said, hopefully we get some more interesting things, like possibly a PS5 Pro performance mode and that sort of stuff. What you're seeing on the screen is just a briefing for the next mission I'll be running for Traxxas. And, well, be on the lookout for more of my footage. We have much more to talk about. Stay tuned.